Money FM 89.3, the best of Saturday mornings.
International News Review.
Good morning. We're back with Steve Okun, the CEO of APEC Advisors, talking about our International News Review. First story, Xi and Kim and Putin pledged deeper ties after their unprecedented show of unity at the Chinese military parade. Steve, what impact is that going to have, first of all, on the Asia-Pacific region?
Well, it certainly appears that his strategy is working. He is getting more from China now because of his improved relationship with Putin and all that he has done for him from a military perspective. And you see this in the readout of the meeting between Xi and Kim, where for the first time ever, and they've met 4 or 5 times previously, for the first time ever, the denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula was not mentioned in the Chinese readout. So we now see China giving apparently tacit approval for North Korea to be a nuclear power. And if that is true, that will have huge implications for Asia and for the world as to what other countries are going to do right now if Kim is welcomed into the club of nuclear powers.
Xi said, and I'm quoting here, the two countries should strengthen strategic coordination in international and regional affairs, and this is the key part, to safeguard common interest. Is that Xi Jinping addressing the elephant in the room, also known as the American president?
Yeah, clearly. And look, the world has changed so much. In 2016 and 2017, China and Russia shared the U.S. goal of rolling back North Korea's nuclear weapons programs. China and Russia voted with the United States at the National UN Security Council to impose those very harsh economic sanctions against North Korea. Those days are long gone, and it is now, as you see, a world being split up where you have, and you saw this at the military parade, not just North Korea and China and Russia together, having the leaders together for the first time ever, but throw Iran into that mix too.
Indeed. But also there's an element to it. It's not just about the US, is it? Is it also China seeking to reassert its own influence over North Korea in light of the closening of relations between North Korea and Russia in recent years?
Well, no, I mean, and that is why I opened by saying, Kim has played this diplomatically from a North Korea perspective very well, because he is giving up lives for Putin to continue his invasion of Ukraine. The South Korean intelligence agencies estimate that 2,000 North Koreans have died fighting for Russia in their invasion of Ukraine. And so what this has done is that Xi has been nervous about that relationship between North Korea and China. So he needs to
North Korea and
Russia. So he needs to reassert his supreme relationship over North Korea, because that is where they get something like 95% of their trade is with China.
Yep.
And so he is doing that now by welcoming Kim, by giving him, again, that tacit nod to being a nuclear power. And you see the United States, imposing these ridiculous, in this context, secondary sanctions against India for buying Russian oil, yet Trump does nothing when it comes to China, because it is China that is allowing the Russian war machine to continue on and on and on. Trump doesn't look at that, but he puts these secondary tariffs on India because of their purchases of Russian oil. So you really see a change in geopolitics.
And talking about that change in geopolitics, the possible losers in this part of the world, small L, would be Seoul, would be Tokyo, would be Manila, would be Hanoi, right? Because if a strengthened North Korea and China alliance means that many of these, and Taiwan, let's not forget Taipei, many of these other countries that have immediate challenges with either North Korea or China are now having to face a block of support, those two countries or those three countries, Russia, China, and North Korea, aligned, if you will, and in step with each other. What does that say for the future of the potential poly crisis in this part of the world, especially at a time when the U.S. is backing off some of its military commitments or altering the military commitments in Asia Pacific?
Well, I mean, let's just start, as you mentioned, Glenn, with Seoul and Tokyo, because look, Japan and South Korea have foregone nuclear weapons because the world, China, Russia, the world has been trying to block North Korea as much as possible on nuclear weapons, and they could count on the United States having Tokyo and Seoul, Japan and South Korea under the U.S. nuclear umbrella. If that's gone, if they can't trust the United States to defend them, and China is no longer working to denuclearize North Korea and Russia is no longer doing to do so, then are they going to go nuclear? And if they go nuclear, one, what is that going to do for their countries, their economies? What do they have to do for defense? How will China react if now Japan and South Korea have nuclear weapons literally on the doorstep of China? So, yeah, this is really leading to a very dangerous situation that the world has pretty much avoided for the last 30, 40 years, and things are changing.
All right, let's go over to the Caribbean Sea. Earlier this week on the Tuesday, the U.S. military killed 11 people in a strike on an alleged drug courier boat from Venezuela. It was a fast boat going across the water. We saw video, black and white video supplied by the U.S. Defense Department. And Trump said that this boat was full of drugs and full of smugglers, and he had a right to blow them out of the water. And very shortly after that, Trump was starting to claim publicly his power to summarily kill suspected drug smugglers. It sounds a lot like Duterte in a few years back in the Philippines. Steve, is that the direction the White House is headed?
It's unclear. It's certainly trending that way. Now, Duterte was doing this in the Philippines against Philippine citizens, doing these targeted
capture and kill.
Here, what the legal authority, the president, is seemingly relying on is that, look, the United States has the right, and the U.S. military has the right, and the U.S. president has the right to order strikes against those who are in combat with the United States. Now, the question is, what is a combatant of the United States? It used to, like, you want to go back to the 40s and 50s and certainly earlier, it was very clear that was only a country. Only a country could declare war on another country back then. Times have changed so much, and you now have terrorists who can, no country took down 9/11, was responsible for 9/11. That was a group of terrorists, and it was then decided that these terrorists would be treated no differently than a foreign government's military attacking the United States. And so that is where you came up with the thought that an enemy combatant could be gone after, and you could kill an enemy combatant no different than you could kill a soldier attacking your country. Now, what Donald Trump is doing is changing, really maybe expanding, and you could say bulldozing the definition of an enemy combatant. And his logic is these people who are taking drugs out of Venezuela, they are terrorists against the United States. They are killing Americans. Therefore, we can treat them no different than we treat an enemy combatant, and you're allowed to kill an enemy combatant.
I had a look. It says the US is not a signatory to the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, right? But the US military's legal advisors have previously said that the US should, and I quote, act in a manner consistent with its provisions. But many international law professors and experts, you can read them on The Guardian, BBC, CNN and elsewhere, said it's likely unlawful. The act was unlawful under the law of the sea, according to many international law professors. Was it lawful, number one? And two, will he care?
Well, I mean, I don't think the law of the sea is relevant here. Either.
Well, it happened at sea for a start.
Sure, but if look, you're not allowed to attack a naval vessel that's firing against you. Of course you can.
It wasn't firing against anybody.
But this is the point that Donald Trump is making. What Donald Trump is saying is that this boat is no different than a destroyer of a country from the enemy of an enemy of the United States attacking us. So his theory, the law of sea, is irrelevant here. The question is, are these combatants engaged in war against the United States? And it is, if you're going to go this far and say a drug smuggler who is committing a crime, no question, but they're not attacking the United States as a warrior would. Is this person should be treated no different? Should this person get no due process whatsoever? Should this person just be able to be summarily executed because they are at war with the United States and they're not a criminal? And he's really taking this definition. And I think if you go here and say it's allowed to do this, then, Glenn, it gets to your point. Well, now does this apply to criminals in the United States who are dealing drugs? Can they just be summarily executed? Does it matter? And so you really are going into an extraordinarily dangerous position if we're going to say that the laws of war have been expanded to apply to this situation.
That's internationally. What about domestically? Because it says the U.S. Constitution says that only Congress has the power to declare war. However, I had a look. Article 2, which lays out the president's power, also says the president shall be commander-in-chief of the army and has some latitude there for this reason. Is it even legal domestically?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a serious debate as to whether it is legal, because are these terrorists allowed to be attacked by the president, ordering these attacks of the U.S. military under U.S. law, where this is a peacetime criminal problem? This is not. We're not at war with these drugs. So that is the question. I would say most people would come down that the president does not have the authority to do this.
So in the past, first of all, I believe the boat was in international waters. So it wasn't, if your argument is they were directly attacking the U.S. with their drugs, they weren't yet. They were in international waters, not U.S. waters. That's my understanding. Secondly, we don't know, because the boat was blown up, that there were actually drugs on the boat, or who was on the boat. Now, it's a fair assumption. Fast boat skimming across the water, avoiding detection is not doing something that's good. But in the past, Steve, it would have been a Coast Guard cutter or a warship would have stopped that boat and then arrested or searched it, first of all, to see what's going on. And then if it was something illegal, arrested the people, taken the drugs, and it would have gone through the court systems. Do we have a sense of why they weren't able to do that? It seems more like a show. We're just going to blast them out of the water because we think they're doing something. So, guilty until proven innocent sort of thing.
No, I mean, I think that the Trump administration is sending obviously an extraordinarily loud message when you're putting the death of these 11 people on his Truth Social and on X, showing that boat getting blown up, and the United States saying we're going to continue to do this. This is a warning. And again, the international water is irrelevant because the United States has taken out thousands and thousands of strikes against Al-Qaeda, and they were in sovereign countries.
So the location isn't necessarily
location.
And Republican and Democratic presidents have done this. This is not just a Republican or just a Trump thing over the decades, right?
Again, I mean, when it comes to the post 9/11 era, yes, Obama did this no differently than Trump has done this, and I assume Biden has done it as well, where they've taken out targeted strikes against terrorists in foreign countries or lawless areas where there was no criminal proof, there was no trial, we did not try and capture them. Now, the difference here is we are now saying, the United States, or the president saying, I can do this to drug smugglers. Mm-hmm. I'm allowed to do this to drug smugglers in open water, even though if we could have captured this boat, we could have brought them in for trial somewhere, but we're not going to bother. We're not going to bother. We're just going to kill them, and we're going to send a very strong message that others should not be engaged in this as well.
Is this, just last quick question, is this subject to any kind of congressional oversight, this particular incident or incidents like this going forward, or is that presidential prerogative?
Oh, no, of course. Well, any Congress before this one, it would have been subject to congressional oversight. Congress could clearly have said this is not what the law allows you to do. Congress could certainly have hearings on this and take actions on it. Of course, it won't because the Republicans in Congress are very, very wary of ever crossing this president. So, yes, Congress has this is part of
the ability to say something about this.
Yeah, this is checks and balances, and this is they're not taking their provision to check or balance at all.
Let's move on to a soft and fluffy story. China's Labubus are a must-have toy. As we know, we talked about it on the show a number of weeks ago. But now the Chinese Labubu, the genuine ones, are created by the company Pop Mart. You can get them here in Singapore, down at Plaza Singapore and elsewhere. But now they are being counterfeited with names like La Fufu, La Gogo, La Baba, and La Pupu. So all of the counterfeit variants are coming into the play. This is kind of a 360-degree story, isn't it? Things have come full circle when China is now being counterfeited on its products.
Glenn, exact point I was going to make. When I would go on trade missions to China, year after year, certainly in the early and mid 2000s, American companies would always be talking about all the IP theft that occurs in China. And the last estimate is that the IP theft costs the United States economy $600 billion annually. And we would all say amongst ourselves, well, the Chinese will only take this seriously when the Chinese IP, when China has IP that can be thieved from them. And we're there today.
Right,
we are
exactly.
now there where Chinese IP is being outright stolen in China primarily, right? The manufacturing of these Lafufus or knockoff Labubus, which are two different things. I think there's a Lagogo as well. That's
and a
all.
Lapupu.
It's all occurring in China, and the purchases are happening in the U.S. and elsewhere. So let's see if China starts to clamp down on this blatant intellectual property theft, as they have not done as much as they should have in the past.
Chinese products, counterfeiting Chinese products, is the greatest thing ever.
I know.
I just think
it's hilarious. Yeah.
But on a not that serious a point, Steve, I didn't realise Pop Mart has recorded a 400% increase in profits alone for the first half of this year. Normally, you only get upset about IP if it's really starting to cut into your bottom line. It isn't yet.
No, it is. Of course, it's because
these are alternatives, you could argue.
No, I mean, no, they're not. Well, no, they're knockoffs, and you have to have. Their margins are going to come way down. There was one toy manufacturer in Dongguan that sold 150,000 fake Labubu toys, and they made $278,000. So that $278,000 should have gone to Pop Mart, and it was stolen from Pop Mart. You have to protect intellectual property, and so if you're Pop Mart, you need to protect what you have, because all you have is the IP. Anybody can make these things. Now, I should say that some of these things that are getting made are really bad knockoffs, and could actually cause some kids to get sick, by having parts fall off and you can choke on them. So there is a health and safety issue here, but there is a financial issue here.
All right, let's move on to our final story. The Pulau Ubin boatman is making the news. As we all know, that's the only way you can get across the water in a public conveyance is by those bum boats that run from the Changi Ferry terminal, the small one, over to Pulau Ubin. It really blew up the internet today, this week, I should say, in Singapore.
Indeed. Everybody knows that you have to fill the boat first. I think it's 12 passengers. Once you've got 12 passengers, you can go. If you don't have 12 passengers, you can pay the difference. You can top up the fare to get the boat quicker so you don't have to wait. This week, a boat operator asked all the passengers to pay $5 instead of the standard $4. Passenger complained and waited for the next boat. He ended up waiting an extra hour and paid more anyway. Some are saying, well, it's fair on the bumboat driver. He needs to fill his boat. Some are saying it's extortion. Where are you, Steve?
Okay, look, I have certainly been in the position where when I believe I am getting ripped off, then my righteous indignation comes through and I will fight. Except in this case. We're talking about $1 Singapore dollar. It is the ferry that is leaving at 6 o'clock at night, so it's probably the last one off of this island. There's no other way to get back. Is the boatman taking advantage of the situation and saying, instead of giving me $4, you need to give me $5? Maybe. So what? Just pay the dollar and say, that's just life. Now, because this person with all their indignation, said, I'm not going to pay you that dollar I shouldn't have paid you, then he doesn't get a boat ride back at all, and now he's got to go charter his own. And what makes this story even better is that the boatman who takes the last ferry back, then the guard says, well, the boat's got to come and get me to take me back, so you can just come with me and you can ride with me. What was the same boatman? he said, you're not riding my boat. So now the guy's got to go. Now, I understand.
All right, let me step in here. First of all, all right, there's a lot of things. First of all, $1 is $1. It's not that big of a deal, so okay. Secondly, this is the only way for most people to get across the water unless they swim or have their own boat. It's the only way to get to Pulau Ubin, a place that the government wants people to go to enjoy nature, to see things, to go buy dinner or whatever at the local shops there. I think there needs to be a more standard pricing or a more standard way of getting across. I don't think that if you're sitting there with your family of 3 or 4 kids that you should have to wait 45 minutes or an hour till the boat gets full, or you shouldn't have to pay $48 to rent the whole boat to get over there. I just think there should be some. Now, whether or not the boatman gets compensated from the government or whatever, I don't know. I just think from a perspective of a customer, there should be some sort of middle ground there where things are.
All right, I'm going to disagree with you. Okay. You make very valid points, but this is old school Singapore, right? We don't need to over-regulate everything. Now, look, the national parks has a website. It says the boat fare is $4 per person for each trip. Well, clearly it isn't, because these people are going to get charged.
Yeah, and that's my point. Right?
So just say, you know what you're getting into when you go to this place. Almost everybody does. You know what? We don't need to regulate everything. And so, all right, the guy got ripped off by $1 and he refused. And you know what? That's what part of the charm is of Pulau Ubin. And I'm like, I can live with that.
And I'm not speaking for this person. We don't know the person, although we do know he sent a very stern complaint letter to the Straits Times. So that's how this story went viral. But how many times have I heard myself or other Singaporeans say, when you go to Bangkok or KL or Jakarta, what is the first thing you do? You haggle. You barter. It's part of this charm, apparently, to go to these night markets, to Pasar Malam and haggle. But we can't do it here. What's the difference? The guy's thinking, I just make an extra $1, I make the extra $1.
Because there's no choice, maybe?
And to flip it around, I have taken boats where it wasn't full. But because you had an easygoing relationship with the guy, you topped up an extra $1, he's only lost a couple of bucks. You meet somewhere in the middle. Could they have not met somewhere in the middle? And I think it would have been absolutely fine.
Yeah. He should have just given him $4.50.
Whatever.
Right in the middle. I'm joking.
Yeah,
it's $1. Just give him the $1. We don't,
People, we know people in this town will cross the street to save 50 cents, right? Or 25 cents. People are very
or pull over to save 50 cents on COE.
on the ERP. People are very price conscious, maybe not necessarily in all of our worlds, but many people still are. Okay, we got to run. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
The Godfather.
The Colonel, the Godfather. We will see you next week.
We'll come up with a new nickname for them.
There we go.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.